Let's have a bit of fun till I downfall. My love, if you feel like I do right now, don't say you're on the run to the other side, my love. But you never do. Sugar, there's a reason why we lose. You say you wanna cry, but you never do. Sugar, there's a reason why we lose. You want. Let's have a bit of fun till I downfall. My love, if you feel like I do right now, don't say you're on the run to the other side, my love. You say you wanna try, but you never do. Sugar, there's a reason why we lose.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to A Talk on Titans. Today, we are going to be talking about week number 5, the final week for the NACL OQ, and it is semis and grand finals. And for this episode, we have a guest, Slayer, alongside our co-host, Sater, as well as me, main host. That's right, me, main host, Crims. Slayer, welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, I know I should have been here a little bit earlier, but I appreciate your guys' patience being able to get me on. No, this is actually all tactically just so I could get here for what I will dub this the most important episode. Just from the pure where we're at the qualifiers. I mean, come on. We're naming a champion of the first one by the time we're done here.
Yeah, you definitely snaked your way into the epitome of the show. So good job there. Great planning. We did end up taking a break week, so we didn't really miss out on much. Sater, a lot has happened since our break week here, and unfortunately, you have been heartbroken.
Yeah, that's a nice way of bringing me in. Thanks for that one. Yeah, no, my Gentle Hearts. Yeah, they did fall. The Gentle Hearts did fall. But I still think they showed a lot of heart in their actual games. They looked very, very strong at points. It just came to those late game decision making, and it's something we always talk about with Lotus is that their macro sense is incredible. And eventually they got to just run the rift, and that was the end of them. But I can't be any prouder of what the boys put forward. They were genuinely a shock to everyone else, including everyone here and all of our other predictors in the background. No one put them through, even in the first round against Nightblood. And I said from the start, nope, they are one of my favorite teams going in. They look very, very strong. There's a good chance that they could make it all the way. And even to go up against the likes of Dardock and Robbie and Sushi and all those, very, very proud of the guys right to the end.
I mean, look, we have to be honest. They did have a pretty good showing. They got farther than everyone thought they would. So credit where credit is due. Top 8 finish for them as well. Slayer, do you have anything to add for the GHG run?
Yeah, I mean, I personally have enjoyed. I think I would say Jean Danny is at this point. I would say is a friend of mine. I've known for a while. Funnily enough, he goes to school. He goes to school with my younger brother in college, so they've right. run into each other before, and so I love the guy. For Gentle Hearts, I definitely doubted them. I was wrong in that first round option, but I always held close to my heart that their ceiling was a top 8. I was just hoping that they would make it to that ceiling, and they certainly did. And that's really what the first qualifier is about for a lot of these orgs, is if you want a punching shot at promotion tournament, you just got to get top 8, because if you don't get top 8, from a point standpoint, you are mathematically not going to make it. So Gentle Hearts are positioned well for the more important qualifier of the summer.
Yeah, being in that position before, you basically have to, like, if you don't get any significant amount of points in the first round, you basically have to win the OQ the second time around to even be considered or have enough points mathematically, as Slayer's saying. So that's a tougher road. It's easier to go for top 8 finish and a much more relaxed finish the second time around. As we're going to go ahead and take a look at the bracket that is presented before us here, the teams that have made it past those quarterfinals into the semis here. And so we can see a lot of clean finishes all around. The only one that does stand out is that Goon versus BlackRock Esports game. They did drop one as well, but everyone else for the semifinals for the top 4, clean wins straight through.
Yeah, completely clean. It was interesting, though. Some of those 2-0s are like a little bit misleading. I do think some of these games were a lot closer. I know Sater was talking about how Gentle Hearts were able to play a pretty close 30-minute game in game 1 against Lotus, and then Polestar were down in the early game up against Wangtown when I got to watch them, but were able to pull that one back as well. So not all clean sweeps, but there's always one part of the playoffs where you get those expected results, and I feel like it's usually in the top 8. Except for one series, which I know nobody really had Ducky versus AMI, but with what we've known from those two teams coming into that top 8 match, it kind of went how it was expected.
Did you say nobody had Ducky winning?
Nobody had Duck. Did anybody pre-tournament have Ducky in the top 8? That's what I'm trying to say.
Pre-tournament.
I'm saying pre-tournament. Did anybody have Ducky in the top 8?
I didn't even have an idea of who was in the tournament because I was brought in very late. I had Ducky in my Elite Four.
Okay. Well, you know what?
We threw Sater in the deep end. We threw Sater in the deep end, and he was swimming. He got some good predictions in, so we got to give him credit for that. And look, Ducky's definitely the most exciting team, right? Definitely the most exciting team. They've had a gigantic splash in the pool that we're talking about right now. I did think they were going to be AMI. I think they were. They seem like no one's figured them out just yet. So I think that is an interesting team to be watching, and I think it's time to start talking about these semis. Let's go ahead, shoot it over to our left bracket first, and let's start talking about Pulse. As they had their game, it seemed like it was going to be a pretty easy win for them. They did have a nice matchup in that mid lane Slayer. I no doubt you want to talk about that matchup versus Cinna, but it looked absolutely devastating.
Yeah, so Ariandel actually went up against 2 mid laners in that series due to the fact that Cinna was actually the sub for that Wangtown team. Debonair stepped in for game 2. It quite literally didn't matter. He ends up going like 18-2 and 9 across the 2 series. When Cinna subbed in, Ariandel was up like 6-1 on his Pat and Jace in that mid lane matchup, and then they gave him Corki in game 2, and it was just disastrous. I mean, the stats speaks for themselves. His KDA is above of arguably one of the top 80 carries in the tournament next to Ariandel, and I'm just very much so in love with the fact that Ariandel as a player is somebody that we knew could play some of those AD mid laners based off of his prior experience with Jace, which meant he could step really into the meta when it came to Corki Tristana. But then he also always has this Hui, this Aurelion Soul, and that Pat and Galio to lean back on. It's really cool to see a team surround themselves to play for Ariandel ever since he made the switch to move to Chicago and just focus on getting better. And he's looked like the best mid laner in Tier 3, arguably, since this qualifier started off. Barring another name I'm sure we'll talk about soon.
All right, Sater, what are your thoughts here on Pulse?
What is there to say? I think, yes, there's a lot to speak about when it comes to Ariandel, but a lot of it is set up by Will, a lot. And I think 100%. It's a lot of that partnership coming through, more than just let's talk about Ariandel the whole time. I think the way that Will plays around that mid lane really exemplifies the way the team want to play. And I think they just set themselves up for success really, really easily, especially when you look at what the likes of Prismal was playing. He was playing like way Nautilus bot. It's a very safe lane that you're just scaling, and you're playing that Jarvan with the Corki, I believe it was.
Yes.
To just make sure that comp works. And then you also have a second AD top laner, I think, in that game where I was screaming that you have way too much going on until I saw the Hui. But they had double AD with a Jarvan, so the lockdown was there, Varus was there, and then Corki to follow. It was very, very simple then for Will to go, I can just sit mid lane. Like, I can just work around that, make sure Ari never has flash, never has ult. Corki's always safe. And then I always have prio on every single objective from that point. So everything they want to do, it's set up by Will. So I think a lot of credit has to go over to that jungle role as well.
Yeah, I think we're outlining that this is a very strong 2v2 mid duo. I think that Hoarder also did pretty good in the first game. We can talk about the second game in a bit. And Prismal's been just, with Clarice, they've been solid in this bot side. Kind of unmovable. I like seeing the Hui bot, especially having mages in the bot lane right now. I think is underrated. A lot of teams should be doing it. There's another player who also played a mage bot. We'll talk about them later. But let's move over to the game 2. You were talking about the Varus top lane. I would say experimental, not that much of a success, honestly.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I'll go into it really quickly. Stop playing it top, play it mid. It's just better. Just play it mid lane. It's something I want to see a lot more people playing. We saw it in LEC today. It was abysmal. But before Slayers today, I do think it is slightly stronger in the mid lane if you don't want to play that Corki Tristana matchup, because Corki will just eventually win with any sort of pressure. So just play the Varus. It's better.
I will give Hoarder a little bit of an alleviance of pressure when it comes to that game, and kind of just in general, the way Polestar have been geared up in a lot of ways, with the fact that Will we already talked about, likes to lean towards Ariandel a lot. And even then, I think Prismal and Claritz have played a lot of safer bottom lanes. I mean, if you're playing Hwei and Ezreal in a series, that's like as safe as you could get from an AD carry position. So it kind of forced Hoarder to be the one that absorbed a lot of the pressure, and that really showed in that game too against Wangtown. Does that excuse the fact that he goes down like 0-3-1 in the early game on Varus top? No, of course not. But what ended up happening was they pushed so much pressure onto this Varus that Ariandel was a 6-0 Corki, and then Prismal came out of lane like 3-1 on this Hwei. And once they all fought together, the game was over. So I think Hoarder is playing the very prototypical top lane role on a team that has a lot of firepower in the other carry positions, which is, I recognize I'm gonna have some deaths in the early game, and I'm not here to be as fed as my counterparts are. And I think even his champ pool has shown that switch. The Varus top, yes, is somewhat carry oriented, but the fact that he's been picking a lot more Cassante, he's been willing to pick the Skarner and the Rumble, kind of signals, hey, you guys don't necessarily need to play for me. I'm willing to be a cause in different ways than damage.
Yeah, and I thought the Jax looked particularly good, especially in a Malphite, not the easiest thing to do. So I think Hoarder on the rise, doing well. Flash was blown early on the Varus, so that's going to be a little bit of excuse for the Varus top lane score. But overall, I think when I look at Pulse, I said this last show, they're the most LCK of all the teams here, and that's because they play the slow game. They tend not to make too many mistakes in that early game, and then when it comes to the team fights, the Dragon, the objective fights, they're just that much better than the opponent. They don't tend to get out-rotated as well as much. And then when these team fights roll in, they're just such a strong teamwork duo coordination between Will and Ariandel that they'll just take over those fights in the end. So that is very interesting to me because stylistically they're going up an opponent that I think is almost the opposite of them in Lotus here. So if we're switching over to Lotus, I think Lotus, they're taking the game early. They get in your face, they're stomping you, they're putting the lights out immediately. And I think that is such an interesting matchup. Slayer, let's go with you. Do you agree with kind of how I'm pitching this matchup between Pulse and Lotus?
100%. I think what's really interesting about Lotus is kind of the playstyle switch we've seen from some of their, mostly Robbie Bob I want to talk about here, because Robbie Bob came out of CLOL with St. Thomas, and that guy was dominating a no fearless format, just normal league we've known. And while yes, the meta was more mage oriented, he was playing those like safer scalers. He was playing a ton of Aurelion Soul. He played a lot of Azir, where he would just scale up, not die early, kind of that LCK style you just talked about with Pulse. That's how Robbie Bob was playing his mid lane for St. Thomas. He swaps over here. He plays with Dardoch in the jungle, and immediately it's a different switch, right? You're playing, he's on top of these AD mids that are willing to be bullies in lane. You can see below, like, he's been breaking out the Yone to pair an aggressive mid laner up alongside Dardoch, who will pick, like, the Nidalee or this Zyra jungle that's really overpowered right now. And yeah, they just upspeed the tempo. And Sushi and Mixture have been doing the same thing as well. A lot of the time, I've seen them pick this Ashe a lot. We've seen the Kaisa come out a couple of times, and Mixture is no scoff when it comes to playing the Leona or Nala's and that Pad and Nico that comes out to be aggressive. And that, I'm glad you said it, Crims, is why I think this Lotus Polestar matchup is going to be a really fun battle of who's going to enforce their style onto the Rift in what I assume, not to spoil my predictions, will be 3 games of it.
Well, I think we have a lot of 3-game predictions here. But it's who's going to be on top that we're going to save for later here. Satyr, look, we talk about Robbie Bob. The Only's looking good. You talk about Dardoch often. What's your read on this team?
Yeah, I tend to agree with everything you've been saying. I think they are very aggressive and in your face. They like to play around those early spikes, but they also play around objectives a lot. We see Zyra so often now for Dardoch as well. He's played it quite a bit. The Ivern was a surprising one for me. I haven't seen him play that one in a while. So it does show that he can step back onto those, which is quite interesting. I just feel like in the GHG matchup, there was a lot more hesitancy coming from Gentle Hearts, and it allowed Lotus to kind of creep with their aggressive style and just kind of overwhelm them a little bit. Watching the games over again, I honestly think that Xiao Dani have kind of felt the pressure of the game because it just kind of disappeared in game 1. Just really didn't have the impact I'm so used to seeing him have. So from what I've seen from Lotus, I haven't seen them improve since before that game. They didn't really have to change anything up. There wasn't too much pressure on them. And Sushi just got to take over the games, really, as the mid lane was just never going to be pressured or moving down, which is something that GHG do quite often. They'll win mid and they'll move it around the map. So I think I need to see Lotus kind of lift themselves up a little bit going into this matchup. I think I want to see more from them again. And yeah, I still think 3 games. I think 3 games will be fine. But yeah, I think all eyes are on Sushi for this one.
Yeah,
yes,
I mean, look at the KDA. Just look at the KDA.
It's got to be leading the entire qualify. I know we have the stats on it. I don't think we even need to check for it. That is absurd. And most of the reason why it's absurd is because 9 deaths on an 80 carry player when you're not playing. Yeah, like he has some Ezreal games, but he's playing like Zeri Kaisa, who are not gonna just sit back and play slow. Sushi, this guy's on another level, and I don't know what the limit is for this guy, the way he's been playing ever since he swapped back to the AD role in Tier 3. Mixture deserves their flowers too, like really well, great pairing, but I just am astounded by how Sushi plays these hyper carries in fights and his positioning, which is usually the defining factor for most ADs at this level, is just sublime to watch.
Yeah. Also, the Kaisa looks really good. Starting to see a lot of prominence. Zeri Ezreal coming into the fold. Makes sense. Kaisa's there along with him as the counter. Looked great on that one as well. And they're just super solid and aggressive 2v2 on the bot side. You could see them. They're not afraid to just fight 2v2. Might open them up to a gank, but Dardoch is usually just on the other side of the map, harassing the other jungler to free them up to do these kind of plays. And Cross felt it that game too versus the Nidalee as well as the Renekton from Porsche up at the top side. You know, Porsche's stat line doesn't look that great, but in terms of what they pulled off early game, it was exactly what their team needed. Dardoch got off to a great start, started to take over the jungle, and eventually they just permanently in GHG's jungle, and the game is over. So this is the type of lights out gameplay style that I really like. I think it's amazing to see. I think it's a good look as well for all of Lotus. They seem really confident, and they just have the ability to basically win the game at 15 minutes. Like usually around then, they make a really good macro decision to open up the map, and then outside of them making a mistake, the game's kind of over.
So would you guys be willing to say, not from a talent level, but that the Lotus Polestar matchup is like the stylistic equivalency of an LCK LPL game? Because that's what it feels like to me the more we talk about it.
Tater, what do you think?
I think I already made that comparison.
I think we might have.
I genuinely think I made that comparison like in week 2 about their playstyles, that it would be LCK versus LPL. But I'm starting to see Lotus a little bit stronger now. I'm starting to think of more 2019 G2. I think they're that level of aggression now, because we all know LPL is messy aggression. They seem a lot more controlled in it. And especially when it comes to anything on the bot side of the map. Like when you think of Zeri, you think of trade-off, maybe 3 kills, but you die. That's kind of what you expect from a Zeri, those big pop-off plays. And then there's Sushi, who goes 7-0 and 7. You go, okay, cool. We'll just throw all that out the window, and you're just playing that's an unkillable champion now. But dying more on a Kaisa.
Okay.
That doesn't make sense to me in my brain. So yeah, I think honestly, if they go down to that aggressive LPL or G2 early style and it works on that bot side, I don't think there's much teams that will be able to beat them, because that tempo is crazy.
Yeah, they're a super fast team. Love seeing them play. Let's go ahead and move on. We're going to talk about all these teams later. Let's move on to the other side of the bracket, and let's do the new kids on the block. It's going to be Ducky Getters here, as they've had a fantastic showing. This is one of the best rookie showings for the top side as well. Usually, it's like one player, but a slew of top side players on this team just came through and are just an absolute wrecking ball. I think no one's figured them out just yet. I had an interview with Bio, revealed to me that Dr. Calculus doing a lot of the drafting, so credit where that is due for Dr. Calculus. They've been doing really creative drafts. Rough Beans apparently is insane, willing to play anything. We'll talk about that. And Enthralled and Hiccup, their late game carry potential is through the roof here. So I'm going to throw it over to Sater, because you definitely like this team. So I'm just going to give it to you. Where do you want to start talking about these guys?
I guess I'll go into the kind of top side because it's something that spoke to me immediately when it came to watching Duckies, that I like a top side that can work on its own. I like my jungler being mid and bot. I think there's more impact around those kind of Drake areas. And I always think of Drake as a better win condition than Grubs because Grub needs to be activated by good siege. So I like a top laner that can work on their own. And when you see Dr. Calculus, he's like laying Rumble, TF, Camille, Shen if he needs to go somewhere, and obviously Cassante because everyone has to play Cassante. It's just bread and butter at this stage. But even in the games he's playing TF top, which has been out of meta for a while, he brings it back and goes, I know I can win that lane or at least put decoy behind. You can deal with the rest of it. Don't worry about it. And he done it perfectly. And it's something that I think when you have a top laner that can step into a game, control the game, playing a TF, playing the Camille, and just being a menace, I think that is exceptional for Duckies. And I've loved the way he's played throughout the whole kind of split here. On the other side of it, Bio just likes to take over games randomly out of nowhere. Just decides I'm going to win this for you, and they just turn a fight, and it's just over in front of you. And I genuinely think they're one of the scariest teams if you catch them on their day.
Yeah. All right, Slayer, where do you stand?
I mean, I think Sater made I think there are easy points to make about the Duckies. I think Sater made the very smart and maybe unsung thing when it comes to Dr. Calculus, because I agree with you. I think mid right now, at least, jungle should be playing for mid bot in the current meta, especially mid lane. And I like top laners that are willing to play into the top lane island. That's something Dr. Calculus has done very, very well. I've said this every time I've talked about the guy, but I haven't said it here. So I want to do the little spiel about rough beads. People, it is crazy to me, and it makes me so happy that Rough Beans is even here, because the story about Rough Beans was that this guy randomly joins Clown Gaming's ACL roster because he impressed them so much. We know nothing about the guy. He just pops in. We hear great things from one combine. He proceeds to go ahead and smash basically every mid laner in the playoffs on the Clown Gaming run, which includes, by the way, Blue Otter Samikin. He beat in a series as well, and then he comes out of that, he loses in the finals to the ACL finals, and everyone's like, all right, well, Rough Beans, he doesn't really care about playing competitively. This guy doesn't play solo queue, like he doesn't care about any of that stuff, and so he's probably not going to end up in an OQ roster. And luckily, he got all of his friends together. And what happens? The guy is just a matchup nightmare. That's his entire brand. He is a matchup nightmare. All right, how am I going to get a lead into you when you're picking Ivern and mid and you're not giving me anything when I'm picking an aggressive AD mid laner? Oh, well, I'm screwed. All right, Vygar to just outscale you and trap you in lane all the time? Sure, sounds fine with me. Oh, Nautilus mid, I'm going to pull my APA out? Yeah, it doesn't matter. And it works really well because Bio is just this crazy hyper carry jungler that can play all these like AD and Lilia AP mid junglers that can carry out their mind. But it's just so fun to have, after seeing so many mid laners where it's like, all right, I just have the best hands. All right, I can scale the best and play fights. We have Rough Beans, who is a draft nightmare, and that's partly why the Lucky Getters have just not been figured out by this point.
I mean, look, Dr. Cat is also willing to pick things like Shen and Bio. Okay, is a Rengar OTP, but showed that they can play it in a competitive setting there as well. And this team was brought together by Enthralled, as Bio leaked to me. So credit Enthralled for building this team. They don't actually have a coach, so if you guys didn't know, they know now. So they don't have a coach, and Enthralled Hiccup in that bot side doing a solid job here. I do have to point out some weaknesses for Enthralled and Hiccup specifically.
No, you don't.
Sometimes the jungler comes down there and completely thrashes their bot lane. They do come back with a vengeance, though. So in terms of teams coming back, you could see it in their games as well versus AMI. When they come back, it is magnificent. And so depending on who they go up against, this could be a huge issue. But I do think that is a weakness. Sater, am I a hater? Am I correct on this one?
No, you're a hater. Like 100%. there is no argument here. Like you decided to go, Dave picked Galio. Well, I can out tank him with Nautilus. Like this man is in a straitjacket playing League. Like he is clinically insane every single time I see him on the Rift. And the Vagar pick, like they go, okay, we have Vi, we've Callista. We're going to make sure.
Okay, but you're not addressing my point. You're talking around my point.
I'm not talking about the weaknesses because they don't have one. The Duckies are elite.
Okay. There they have no weakness. Okay.
Back, literally water off a duck's back. There is no weakness to the team. But I will talk about the bot lane a little bit because you're going to keep bringing it up. Yes, there is some weaknesses there. Yes, they're susceptible to ganks and they do get messed up by how aggressive Bio is. They seem very complacent in their playstyle to we'll just scale. We'll be fine. We'll get through it. We'll let the rest of them do their thing. Yes, that is a playstyle to have. That's not always a bad thing. We speak about other teams doing it and we kind of give them all of the praise for being that safety bot side. But when it comes to Ducky Getters, I've seen it even online that they're like, oh, they never go aggressive. They don't, and sometimes they do lose lane, but when it comes to that mid game, they're there, they're doing damage, they're doing their job, and that's all that matters to me. I don't care if you go 0-10 in lane if you win the game. I've always said this, if you can pull the trigger and win a game, no matter how far behind you are a player I would want on my team if you have that go button. So for the like of Enthralled, when he's scaling on that brand, comes into the late game and just goes, right, we win this fight and goes, that's enough for me. So you may say they're weaknesses, I just think they're better strengths.
Okay. I mean, look, the brand game, they did really good together in lane. Honestly, Enthralled came out extremely powerful in that game, and they were able to win that one pretty easily after that point. Slayer, I'm going to throw something to you here. Bio kind of showed us something new, especially why the Camille deserves to be banned away from Dr. Calculus. They put together the Camille Sejuani combo, and this is a champion that you think Bio wouldn't be able to play. Did show the Vi as well. So the more competitive, the more tank style, the more supportive style champion comes out from Bio, and it looked amazing.
Yeah, 0-2-15 on the Sejuani. This is what you have to do, and this is a rule of thumb that I always have with once you get to the playoff level of qualifiers here, is you can't be a single-faceted team. More so, you can't be a single-faceted player. And I think now in the Fearless format as well, you just can't. And Bio isn't one of those players, but outside of the Sejuani, you could realistically fit every other one of his champions into somewhat carry-oriented. Like,
yes,
we can maybe have a conversation about the Vi, but reality, yeah, all pretty carry-oriented, all involved pretty much from the get-go in the games to do damage. So it was really impressive for me to see Bio play that way. I knew Dr. Calculus could play a really good Camille from some of his time in the CLO bracket and some of the combines I watched him play. So it's good to see he still has that. But I think with the Ducky Getters, you always get back to the. I always land myself back on the same thematic point. And to partly talk about the bottom lane again, the Seder was talking about with the brand Nami, is they are just such a fun team to watch, think about how to draft, how to slot damage in, how to slot certain supportive and tank aspects into these games to fit their style. And it's what's got them this far. I can confidently say that teams are having to scrim and draft game plan for the Ducky Getters much differently than any other team that has left in the qualifiers, and it's been that way for a very long time. Part of that is that they are a good team for the Fearless format, but Fearless is the future, so the Ducky Getters are the future. Get used to it, everybody. All
right, Ducky Getters are the future. Quack, quack, coming through. Interesting. Hasn't played Aatrox yet, so we'll see if that gets unveiled.
It's crazy, right? that was like his champion for a while.
I mean, now it's kind of Camille, and also showed the TF. So they're just expanding their pools here. As we're gonna go ahead, jump to our last team. Of course, they don't need any introduction, but we're gonna do it anyway. Dragoons Goons here. This is going to be a roster that has the best history right here, Slayer. They have star players, well-known players. Everyone fears someone on this team. There is no doubt. Dragoons Goons, what is going to be our read on them, Slayer? Even though they did drop a game, maybe some questions are in for this team?
Yeah, I get the vibe. I don't want to assume that they're like not trying as hard in some of these series they have, or maybe not. Maybe the better word is not respecting their opponents as much, but they definitely have been caught and punched in the mouth a couple of times in series that you were expecting them. You're expecting them to likely sweep. Obviously, like the Gentle Hearts series comes to mind, where they end up dropping a game. Once again, That's Gentle Hearts playing the ceiling that we talked about earlier, so
Yeah.
it makes sense. But you know, in those games, like I saw Dragoon get in that series in general. Dragoon was like really heavily targeted and really fell behind on like his carry oriented picks, and he had to end up defaulting towards like a Cassante, which isn't really Dragoon's style. They lose a game to BlackRock as well, and they just seem a little bit shaky. And that might just be because we have these crazy expectations on them. But at the same time, like you mentioned, Crims, if we go across the board, Sudsy's going for his third promotion of his career, which is so unfortunate that he actually never played on either of the teams he promoted with. But he's going for his third promotion.
Yeah.
Dragoon and Kisno have played in the NACL. Array was a sub on an LCS team for a bit, also with St. Thomas. And then Daption is coming right off. I had him on an All-Pro third team after his NACL performance with Fear. So, yes, they're allowed to lose games like anybody is, but they're the consensus number one team, and it's not close. And the fact that they have looked a little human is still weird.
All right, Sater, jump in here. What do you got?
Looking human's a very good way to put it, actually. If gods can bleed kind of style here. Yeah, Dragoons Goons, I'm gonna have to be honest, they're one of the teams that for all the hype they hadn't impressed me that much. And that might be me being a hater for once, because usually I'm the one to hype up all the teams. But they win all their games. They look really, really good, but they continue to drop games where they shouldn't. They make big mistakes, whether it be in draft or in game, that you don't expect from a team of this caliber. And that's what's worried me from the very beginning, when everyone's like, oh, Dragoons Goons are probably the best team in this. They're probably the team that are going to go the whole way and all this. And I was like watching them and I was like, why are people saying this? There wasn't any show-stopping moments for me. And that's what worried me. I can see individually all incredible players. I'm not going to say that they're not. They have absolutely incredible moments, each and every one of them. But sometimes they mess up in the little things and it builds into bigger things. Like we especially saw it in their loss against BlackRock Esports, where they all just kind of fell asleep a little bit and they kind of just let BlackRock control the tempo of the game. And for them to lose sub 30 as well was very surprising for me. I expected if they were going to lose a game, it was going to be a 35 plus massive multiple Baron takes, multiple Elders, being like absolute madness. But it looked almost very clean from BlackRock Esports in that game from top to bottom. So I don't know, there's some things that maybe just screamed there is something there that was figured out by BlackRock, and Dragoons Goons covered it in their last game by just kind of dominating in that top side, by Dragoon going, okay, we can't let them see that. I'm going to pick Darius and we're just going to win.
I mean, the Darius was nasty, honestly, and yeah, I didn't like BlackRock Esports strategy into the Darius. Kind of just played right into it, and Dragoon had an amazing game. Only died like one time, surprisingly. But I think the problem with them is they don't exactly have consistency in the game. I think that's their big issue. I think we all can highlight they have their really high highs, but then in the game they also have some interesting, kind of like questionable gameplay. Outside of, I think Array though has been kind of like the most rock solid player on this team for good reason. Just really doesn't die too much. Always pumps out the damage. The deaths are a little bit higher than the other AD carries, but look, they've lost some games, so they're losing some of the team fights. I wouldn't put it on Array. I also say Sudsy has done an excellent job just being very, very strong in the mid lane as well. Their carry players are exceptional, but some of the plays that they go for don't land them the wins in the games.
I think consistency is a good word for it. This is also another, we talk about the Ducky Getters composition of a team, how they get together. They're they're friends that got put together for an OQ run. Dragoons Goons are the same thing. We just forget about it because of the pedigree they're coming from. This was a team where I think it was like Dragoon and Kisno just picked up a couple of their friends. They also don't have a coach. They're not playing with a coach, so somebody on this team is drafting for them as well. And that will always cause consistency issues unless the talent level is really, really far ahead. And one last thing I would say about Dragoons Goons that I think is a partial problem when it comes to the friend the fact that they're a bunch of friends playing together. If you look across the board and you think about like the champions all these guys are best known for, they're all carry, bruiser, to-do list champions, right? Which, like, Dragoon is Darius, Kisno's Kingdred, Sudsy, you could say, is LeBlanc. I would say is Azir. You can debate that. Doesn't matter. Array of Felios. And then Dabshin. Dabshin made his name last NACL split on Fear, playing these really fun picks. He was undefeated in the NACL playing Heimerdinger support. He broke out a lot of these like fun magey enchanter support picks. But the problem with him on this team is who the hell plays a tank if it's not him? So that's why you see he's just been playing Leona. He's been playing Ornn, Rel, Thresh. He's played some Poppy games, which is kind of his thing as well. But I feel like this team is kind of inhibiting what I've seen the best of Dabshin with, just because there are a bunch of friends that all want to play carry champions.
Okay. Yeah, I think I could see that. They've had some less than... it's suboptimal, but honestly, like, I'm not really going to complain too much about suboptimal drafts. Dabshin might have the best Ornn in the entire tournament, but from support. I think Dabshin is doing good, especially on those tank champions, but it does come a compositional issue if you're pairing it up with Kizna. I think that's a good point. Sader, one last thing to wrap it up on Dragoons, Goons. Do you have anything shouting out to you about this team?
Anything shouting out about this team? Look, I think one of the things I want to see more from them is I want to see a structure to that top and jungle.
Okay.
Sometimes I feel like they don't connect on things. And I feel like there's just a little bit missing there. Like Brand Camille doesn't really scream a combo to me. Same with the second game, I think it was Maokai and Jax. While they just don't synergize that well. And this is one thing that not a lot of people know is I'm a Kindred jungle main. That's like my favorite champion in the jungle. I have a tattoo of it on my arm. Kindred and Darius together are probably the two most broken champions you will ever see in a solo queue game. Because if everyone engages on Kindred and you get the Lamb's Respite, Darius gets free stacks and doesn't die. It's completely and utterly broken. You just time your Q, get a couple of autos off, and then everything dies. I don't know, like, this is one of the first things I saw when I saw their champion pools. I was looking at the op.gg's going, if they unlock the Kindred Darius combo, they're going to win that first game every single time because no one's going to ban those two picks straight out the gate. It's just, I know that Kindred does get banned quite often against them, but at some point it has to go through. Take it either B1, take the Kindred, or take it on red 1-2. Like, it's a completely broken combo that I think we might see more cropping up in the future. Maybe I'm just hoping for a brighter future outside of Tristana and Corki every single game. But look, I just really, really hope that they get that one going because I'd love to see it on the big stage.
Yeah. Darius not the easiest to navigate in the draft, as we can see. All right. That's our teams, but we are also going to be shouting out some players that we thought did super well. We narrowed it down to 4, but honestly, there's too many. So this is not an accurate list or representation, but here we go. I think we all are really excited for Rough Beans. Really like the gameplay and style. And of course, Ariandel, solid mid laner as well. So 2 mid laners on here. Slayer, let's go ahead. Let's talk about Ariandel and Rough Beans.
It's fun, and yeah, I understand from like a standouts perspective, the old rule of thumb is, let's keep it to like 1 lane each for one person. But these guys have honestly been 2 of the biggest storylines about this first qualifiers of summer, and they both deserve to be here for different reasons. Ariandel is just hands diffing everybody on champions that he's been playing for his entire career. And he has a really awesome jungle pairing with Will and a team around him that is willing to play from him from the jump. And that's why his Jace has been so potent. The Corki OP, he's been making it look potent as well. And then Rough Beans is like a totally different story, but he is arguably more fun, definitely more unique to talk about, because like Sader put so well earlier, you don't know what he's going to pick. You don't know what he's playing until the draft is probably over with his champ pool, and he has a counter matchup for whatever mid laner you throw at him, no matter what. And it is just so fun to theory craft in every draft that comes with this guy.
All right, Sader, Mr. Challenger in all 5 roles. What do you think about Sushi here? Probably has the least deaths across in the entire NACL OQ right now. What can you tell me about this AD carry?
I think his adaptability is probably the most impressive thing to me. The fact that I think no matter what the meta might be, he could step into it quite comfortably, is probably the biggest outlier for me, is this player could go very, very far very quickly. And I think they could go all the way. The fact that they have Zeri, Ashe, Kai'Sa, Ezreal, and Senna as their 4 or their 5 standout picks already shows that they can adapt to what their team needs very, very quickly. And we've seen it nearly every single time they've played, that they can just change it up every single time and make sure that they fit the right comp. And I think that's probably the most impressive thing when it comes to Sushi for me. But I am a little bit worried about how well they navigate the early game sometimes. I think it's something we did speak about. There is some things that go wrong in the early game for them. And I think if they can hammer that down and look a little bit more comfortable in those early games, they could probably be the best ADC throughout the whole thing. The GHG game, I saw very small mistakes, but they were capitalized on very, very quickly by just out positioning as an ADC. And that Zeri game is just going to be in my head for a very long time. It was almost like Static Shiv was built for Zeri and built for Sushi to just make sure those extra kills come true. It was menacing towards the end.
Yeah, I mean, absolute monster in that game, just completely taking over team fights, AoE damage, AD carry. So looking very strong. As Slayer, this one coming from you. Daption, supports don't get enough recognition. Well, here we go. A support making to one of our standout players here.
Yeah, I guess I could get a stat check on it, but I think 89 assists might be leading from all supports still left. We'll get checked by our lovely production here, but certainly is going to be high up there. And Daption as a player, I kind of already touched on the fact that he made his name with Fear in the NACL, playing very unique champions. But a theme that I've already harped on once is if you want to be successful at this level and above, you need to be able to play a lot of things and adapt to the meta. And I think the way Sato describes Sushi's champ pool is a way you can think about Daption. So while in this tournament you've been seeing him in the straight engage format that the meta is currently at right now, especially with that Leona coming back around to prevalency, don't be surprised, especially if you have Dragoons Goons in the best of 5 final, if Daption doesn't go for one of those unique support champion picks that only Daption knows how to play. And that, combined with his leadership as a player that has been around for a while, has played the tier 2 level, I just think he is the perfect veteran leader with a champ pool that is too hard to predict in drafts. And he's shown basically everything I just mentioned there so far in this qualifiers.
I mean, if you get down to that last final game, the pool of Daption will certainly stand out and shine through. As this is our standout players here, and we are going to be moving over to our next talking point here. It's going to be the actual matchups. Slayer, I've been informed by production that they are slightly behind, about 9 assist Hiccup from Duck. They do a lot of fighting. Hiccup. They do a lot of skirmishing. So, just getting edged out.
No. Don't downplay it. Don't downplay my boy, okay? No, the Ducks have it, okay? The Ducks have it all the way. They are absolutely
Hiccup, she got it. Let's go ahead.
I do actually, really quickly, one more stat to shout out. Hiccup, she is the third female player to ever make it top 4 in qualifiers history. Shout out Summer for giving me that little interesting fact about Hiccup.
Oh, that's very interesting.
That's really cool. Yeah, very cool to see.
Right, she's also got a nice list of history. Definitely not a rookie here. One of the more veteran players for Duck, so doing a great job. Also, Bio did break her eardrums in a couple of plays. if you watch some of their behind the scenes, let's go ahead. Let's hop up to our matchups now. We're gonna see. So of course we have the Pulse versus Lotus game, and Dragoons Goons versus Ducky Getters, as we're finally going to start talking about who are going to win these semifinals here. So let's go with you, Slayer. You're the guest. Pulse versus Lotus. Who is taking it?
So I definitely already alluded to the fact that I think this is a 3-game series. I also do find it funny, and I think this graphic shows it well, that the both semifinals matchups are from a coach standpoint, it's like Dragoons, Goons, and Duck Eaters. We're just drafting for ourselves. And then on the Lotus Polestar side, it's Rourke and Frost, who have been around forever. which is it'll be fun to see these two coaches go at each other. I am willing to ride the fact. I'm a guy who likes to ride. I'm not fully stat based. I'm willing to somewhat go off of like streaks, or I guess vibes is like a term that people like to throw around with it.
Momentum,
like any of those labels, right?
morale.
Morale. When it comes to Polestar right now, they were the 5-0 team, and they are currently 11-0 in games right now. They have yet to drop a game. So I am refusing to pick against them till they give me a reason to. So I think Polestar comes out 2-1 to go to their first grand final as an organization.
All right. Sater, this is going to be a extremely contentious matchup here. Where are you going for this one?
I kind of went the same. I went 2-1 for Polestar. I think
Okay.
Ariandel and Will just have a little bit more that they've shown me. I think Sushi is incredible. I think Mixture has a lot to work with as well, as long as the rest of the team. But I just think that mid-jungle duo is just too powerful. And I think Hoarder will be able to hold their own in the top lane. And it just leaves Prismal and Clarice to just sit back, relax, make sure that Ariandel is the one to take over the game. And I think Lotus will have a very, very tough time coming to it. So, yeah, I have it down for 2-1 over to the side of Pulse.
Okay. I think we should definitely talk about this. I'm going to be the one odd man out. I think Lotus is taking this one 2-1. And I haven't seen a team of Lotus's level try to take them in the early game. Now, Pulse, obviously, they're very good at stalling out. That's the big question, right? Do they stall this game out where Ariandel and Prismal will be able to dominate team fights? It's going to be based off the junglers here. Will versus Dardoch. Who's going to get the early lead? I think I could ask you here right now, Slayer, just for a mini point. Are these the two best bot lanes for you in the current league?
I would give a slight edge to Array Daption, just from a respect standpoint. But I mean, yeah, we're definitely staring at the top 3 bottom lanes.
Not gonna lie, that's a little bit of disrespect.
I'm just gonna say, based off current performance,
it's probably Sushi Mixture. Yeah, as much as yeah.
So I think I don't think they're just gonna dominate Prismal Clarice. I think this is heavily dependent on junglers here and the 2v2 mid lane. I think Robbie Bob, in terms of playing aggressive, has the Yone pick. I think that's something that either is going to get banned out or is going to be the game that they do, that they will be able to win on, because it just counters Ariandel's pool pretty well overall. You mix in Dardoch there, who's going to play a champion that's going to help Robbie Bob dominate the mid lane. I think that is a very good angle for them to start taking over these games, mess with Will's game plan, mess with Pulse in the early game. And if they do grab an early lead, I expect, they are going to have a nice macro play to extend the lead. Will they mess up is the question, I think. Is Lotus going to make a wrong turn in this game, and then Pulse will be able to come back, have their scaling picks online, and then start dominating the objective fights, which we've seen them do time and time again. So for you guys, you're saying that Pulse is going to be able to do that. I think Lotus will be able to smash through. What is your defense against Dardoch, Robbie Bob, Sater?
What's my defense? From everything I said before, it's Ariandel and Will just being too strong as a duo. I think Dardoch excels at putting junglers down, but Will doesn't really care about that. Will doesn't care about his own scoreline. He doesn't care about how his jungle looks. As long as Ariandel is ahead, he can find farm. He can find time to get himself at least even with Dardoch, especially with how jungle works now. You can't really take a lead anymore. It's not the same kind of style that Dardoch had kind of made a name for himself in. Even back in the old LCS days, he made a name for himself being aggressive, getting ahead. And it's so much harder to do that now. Not to say he hasn't done it already, but against someone that is so focused on making sure Ariandel wins the lane, I don't think you can pick up enough off of that to even give Robbie Bob a chance to scale into that matchup. So I think if Will sticks to his guns, doesn't worry about the farm, and sticks onto Robbie Bob and does not give that mid laner a chance, I think Pulse just have it in the bag. I think Dardoch's style has to change dramatically. in game 2 if he doesn't get it going in game 1.
All right, Slayer. Back up Seder, I guess, and also talk about that bot side.
Yeah, so I think the way this series will 100% go is you can pick the order of the first 2 games. One game is going to be Lotus just blowing the doors open of the early game and winning. The second game is going to be Polestar surviving long enough, and then the third game is when all these extra aspects come into play, right? And I do think the X factor of both of these series is actually the top side, because Porsche and Hoarder as players, from what I've seen, are very, very similar from a storyline standpoint. These are 2 guys that have been part of rosters that have made deep runs in qualifiers forever and been like, all right, are they good enough to be NACL top laners? And they've fallen short a lot of the time. So it's going to be really interesting to see both them go at each other. And I know Hoarder coming off like he was boot camping. He had a really good Swiss stage with his Jax as well. I feel like it's really, this series is a really coin flip for me. I think 2-1 is the guarantee. Who wins it is the really tough part. But I wouldn't be shocked if the one deciding game for the series, if it is in fact game 3, it's going to be Hoarder or Porsche getting a lead that can really define that game. Because you said the bot lanes. When I think about these bottom lanes, Sushi Mixture versus Prismal Clearates, I actually think they're going to be pretty handshaky unless these junglers come around.
Yeah. I think Sushi Mixture, if they get an early lead, I can see them start to take the turret. I don't think they're going to blow out bot lane. I think Prismal Clearates, they're going to play the defensive side. And I mean, that doesn't mean that they won't also get kills on the bot side. But I just see them playing more defensively, trying to hold on in the lane and counter those dives coming through. So I think it's an interesting matchup. I would love to see these guys play in a best of 5. Kind of unfortunate to BO3, because I also agree, like, Pulse could... This is like, I don't know. Is this like a 60, 40, 55, 45? It's a very close matchup. I think either team
100%.
could definitely take it. But let's go ahead and hop over to the other side. Now, in terms of... this is exciting in a completely different way, because we have the Ducky Gators, Dragoons Goons. If the Goons wake up, I think they're gonna take this game easy. But if Ducky Getters catches them off guard, I think it's definitely gonna be a very surprising, shocking for Dragoons Goons. Seder, do I have to ask you, who do you think is gonna win?
No, you don't have to ask at all. No, I have it down for 2-1 for Ducky Getters. I've stood by them through this whole thing. I said very early on they're in my top 4. I honestly think they're one of the strongest teams in this. And on their day, they could take anyone, and I'm going to stand firm by that. I'm not going to change just because they're against such a high caliber team. I honestly think Ducky Getters have something there that if they don't go on to win this whole thing, we'll see them win the next one. I honestly think that there is no end for this team right now. I think they can go the whole way. They can qualify very, very easily. So I have put it down for 2-1. I still think Dragoons Goons can catch them unawares in a game. But I think just the mental fortitude of Duckies is too good. And I'll stick with Duckies all the way through. I think they're a phenomenal team. I can't say anything bad about them. I just absolutely love the way they play the game, and it just feels right every single time they jump onto the Rift.
Yeah, I don't think anyone dislikes the way they play the game. Exciting for sure. Love seeing the champions they pull out. And also, they have new interesting players. Let's talk over to you here, Slayer. Who do you think is going to take this one?
Yeah, so I'll eat the poop sandwich if this is wrong from Seder and go against the Duckies again. Like I'll take all of it that comes my way. I have it 2-1 for the Goons. I think the joking phrase of too big to fail is where I'm at with Dragoons Goons. This team cannot fall short of at least the grand finals of both of these qualifiers. Well, honestly, yeah, for both these qualifiers, in my mind, with the roster that they have here. So while I've talked enough about the uniqueness of the Ducky Getters, how fun their story is, how they're a draft nightmare. I do expect it to go 3, and Dragoons Goons, they're veterans, and they're potentially cleaner macro when it comes to later in these games will get them the win. But I will say to play the other side of it, if the Ducky Getters beat Dragoons Goons and get themselves to a best of 5, they might just win this whole thing purely because having to draft potentially 5 games against Rough Beans and Bio. Good luck.
I mean, I think Bio has a crazy amount of champions played already. Didn't look good on all of them, Lilia, but I have to say looked good on the majority of them. What's up?
Are you not talking about Dr. Calculus playing TF?
Yeah, Dr. Calculus on TF. Surprising that does come back, but the TF game was also super solid. Looked good. I don't think Dr. Calculus. You can't go wrong with this guy. I haven't seen him make a dumb play. I haven't seen him make a mistake so far. Just is a solid player. I have also chosen Dragoons Goons for similar reasons. I think the experience will come through. The more, what's the word? Like plays by the book. More plays by the book is going to be a factor that I think is going to be the one for Dragoons Goons, because Ducky Getters, they like to play in the chaos. They create the chaos and they thrive in it. And I think that Dragoons Goons are going to be able to, lay down the law of the fundamentals of League of Legends come through here. But again, I think Ducky Getters can definitely win this game. And if the Dragoons Goons come out tomorrow, if they come out the next day, Sunday, if they're sleeping at the wheel, they're definitely going to get knocked out. If they're just taking this relaxed, if they're not respecting the players because they don't know who they are or anything like that, they have to be awake for this one. Because I think now Ducky Getters should deserve the credit. I think they are very justifiably a top 4 team. They deserve to be here without a doubt.
Well said. I mean, yeah, I can't disagree at all. The 2-1, as much as I believe the Ducky Getters will win a game, it's also like me respectfully saying this is not a cakewalk Dragoons against, like, at all. I think you made the great point. If you approach this game the same way Dragoons Goons have approached early games of the GSL stage, you will finish 4th and have to have a much bigger Qualifier 2 run than you probably are expected. And the way it sounds like Qualifier 2s are going to kind of introduce some maybe crazier rosters, you really don't want to drop points here. Yeah,
the OQ2 shift will come through as we're going to start talking about who do we think is going to win this one, starting with a friend of the show, Gordo's predictions. We're going to start with Gordo so we can meme on him, of course, make fun of him, riff on him as well. Gordo's predictions. So like me, Gordo thinks Lotus is going to win and Dragoons Goons is going to win as well. So we're there. And they're picking the Goons to win this one in a very close battle between Lotus and Dragoons Goons. That would be another interesting matchup. You guys think Lotus is going to be knocked out here? But yeah, if Lotus and Dragoons Goons were to go up against each other, would be quite crazy. Anything you guys think that would be a 3-2? Sater?
See, I can't see that matchup in my head in the finals. So I can't.
No, just them fighting each other. Just come.
I can't imagine it because I'm never going to see it.
All right.
Like, it's not
Sater is not able to imagine fantasy, apparently.
No, I can't. Look, I'm looking at this and I'm going Lotus and Dragoons Goons. No, there's no way that's going to be our finals. As much as I do respect Gordo's opinion, he also didn't put any points in for Duckies or GHG, so I'm going to stay away.
We need Gordo to eat his words. He needs to say that Duckies, because we asked him straight up, if Duckies beat Wangtown, are they a top 4 team? And he said he had to say yes. So Gordo, where is Duckies is a top 4 team? We need to see it here. Yeah, what's up, Slayer?
Just look at his bracket. This is chalk, Gordo. I mean, this is chalk. This is what this is the classic from Gordo. This is the 1-2 in a heated grand finals. So there's not much to say. This is probably what most people were, at least from the committee standpoint, were expecting the grand final to look like. I don't want to say too much about the Dragoons Lotus matchup. I'm curious why he thinks it'll go 5.
Ooh, interesting. We'll show mine later.
Well, yeah,
Slayer.
I also don't want to say it because we'll have to show. I think I can make the point when I show mine.
Yeah, Slayer, you've been holding on to this information for too long. Let's get his predictions up there. Guest Slayer, here we go. So you said Pulse. Now you're saying Pulse Star is going to go Game 5 with Dragoons Goons.
Did I? I'm I wonder if I actually messed up my graphic.
Okay, you can correct the record since you're on the show. You get that ability.
I do want to make sure to double check the lovely
He had
sheet you guys gave.
3-2 to Dragoons Goons.
Yeah, did I have 3-2? That's what I thought I had. I thought I had 3-2.
Okay, it's the other way around.
It's all right. It's all right. I'm just getting grief.
By the way, this is the second time we've messed up your prediction, so we're definitely doing it on purpose.
that is the funny bit. So yeah, I mean, this is all correct except who has 3 out of 2. So I called a cop out. I put this as a 5-game series for the pure reason that this will be the first time NA has an opportunity to watch a best of 5 on the new full Fearless format, and it has to go 5. I need to see what a Game 5 draft with no bans looks like, with 40 champions off the board. It'll be too fun to watch. So I purely put 3-2 for that fact alone. I do expect, in all reality, we'll at least get that fun Game 4 draft with the new rules. I don't think Polestar will get swept, but my logic here is Dragoons Goons are going to wake up, realize that this is their tournament to lose, and they've been messing around a little bit. They'll get the confidence after beating the Ducky Getters, and they'll come in and end up actually being the champions of Qualifier 1 with that, invigoration and everything else we talked about the Dragoon has on paper. Simply put, I think Dragoons Goons will play in the grand finals the way we expect them to play when we saw this roster get announced. And while Pole still has, a crazy good, there we go. Appreciate you there, production. While Pole still has the crazy good mid jungle duo, they haven't at this point have been 13-1 in my mind in game score right now. Dragoons Goons is too big to fail, and I think they'll, at least for now, win Qualifier 1.
All right, Slayer supporting big teams as we are going to go ahead and flip over to my prediction here. We'll save the best one for last, as I am going with what I think it may be a little bit standard, okay? But maybe I'm just a big fan of Lotus. How about that?
That's fair.
I think this is going to be a 3-1 for Lotus. I could easily see this being also like, a 0-3 for Goons. If they just download Lotus. If you download Lotus, like, it really harms their ability to win a game against you. But I don't think anyone's doing that this OQ. I think they're going to go all the way. I think they're going to win it. I think their aggression, they're the only team that plays like this that I've seen. And they're so calculated and meticulous through their gameplay. I wish we had a stat for their game time. It has to be the lowest across the board. And
probably.
So I think Lotus, I think no one is prepared for the storm that is Lotus, and they're going to be taking it 3-1. As now we're going to let Satyr get his prediction out into the world, and he's going to have to defend himself.
You say I have to defend myself. I have been on fire throughout this entire split with my predictions. I've only gotten, I think, 2 wrong in total through every stage. So, when you say I have to defend myself, no, you have to stop me from doing it again. You have to stop me from winning again. And also, I rolled a d20 3 times to see if you would get your ones correct, and all of them came up in 2s. So I don't think you're going to be right, Crims. So the dice has spoken. But no, honestly, I think if there's ever going to be a fairy tale story, it has to be Ducky Getters taking it. I think, honestly, even the small stats that we did get, with Hiccup showing up with the most assists, little things like that just breathe more confidence into me saying, I think Ducky Getters can take it. I think Pulse are an amazing team. I think Dragoons Goons are an amazing team. I think Lotus are an amazing team. But the thing that's standing out to me is they will continue to scale throughout this. Ducky Getters, this is their time. This is their moment, and they can't let it slip. This is their chance to go. We made it all the way to grand finals, and we can win it. And they will put everything on the line to make sure. While the rest of them, they're like, look, we got top 4 already. We can ease off on a little bit on the accelerator. We can relax a little bit. And I think that's Ducky Getters' chance to just take over and make sure that they come into the second qualifier ready and have all the points they need to qualify. I think Fairy Tales can come true, and I will stick with a 3-1 finals for the Ducky Getters against Pulse.
All right, Satyr predicting the duck attack. Yeah, what's up?
I want on record that I want Sater's prediction to be right. Like this, I want this. This is what I want. This is fun.
Did I make you believe a little bit in the Duckies?
100% you do. Yeah, your passionate speech. I just have to ground my predictions in somewhat of my somewhat of my realities. But I want Ducky Getters to win this whole thing. That is the most fun thing for Tier 3 ever.
I mean, we're kind of baking it, our Dragoons prediction, on the fact that they've been taking a little bit of a break here, Slayer. So, how can we predict if they're going to start waking up? That's a hard prediction. From what we've seen, though, Duckies look a little bit fiery on the Rift. Right? We can't deny that.
No, not at all. They come with a tenacity and a uniqueness that has yet to be checked and potentially will not be checked for Qualifier 1.
I think interesting with your updated prediction. So I thought at first we all predicted a different team, but now we're in a different unique situation where none of us predict Pulse to be the winners here. So let's talk about that, since we all kind of agree on that unanimously. Just a little bit before we go, why does Pulse not have it? What are they missing? Let's go with you, Sater.
I just think there's some sort of, I don't know, curse, I guess it is, when it comes to Pulse. Because I've casted teams called Pulse before. And there's just, no, honestly, I just think there's something missing there from that team. There's something that they are one of the best, but there's just that last little, it's a flake, it's a hair, it's the smallest thing that just doesn't make me believe that they can go all the way. I think they can get there. I think they could get to grand finals. And I think they have everything they need to get there. There's just something small missing, and I can't put my finger on it. It's just the vibes are off. It's something that Slayer said earlier. Sometimes I usually go off of vibes, momentum, and how I feel the team is doing and how their morale is and kind of the story behind it. Because I know in these positions when they're playing in tournaments, sometimes a player can believe hard enough that they play just a little bit better. Their confidence is there and they can play out of their mind for just that one moment. And that's the moment that changes everything. And that's the beautiful thing about League. You could be down 10k gold. You could be at a Baron. They've got Prio. They've got wards. You have nothing. And a Yumi Q can fly over a wall and just take a Baron. And it can change everything. So sometimes it's the little moments that I just see a little bit more in Ducky Getters than anyone else. I think Pulse are just missing that little bit of magic.
For me, I think that before you go, Slayer, I think for me, it's just their early game. That's for me. Look, they're always just behind. Now, is it like game losing? No, it's not. It's not game losing, but they're just always behind. For me, it's just a team that, it could just be, the game could, they just didn't play the early game good enough and now they're out of it. On the other side, it does mean that the other team has to execute to a level to beat them. And that's the worry for me, right? It's like, can these teams execute to beat them? I feel like they can. And that's why I'm not as confident in Pulse. And that's why, that my vibes is rested in that. For you, Slayer, where do you find them off?
I think they can get exploited in the early game by playing too heavily towards Ariandel. And if it does not bear a lead like it has up against lesser opponents, Prismal, Clarice, and Hoarder can suffer. And especially when we talk about some of these other teams, and I think we can confidently say Pulsar have yet to play a bottom lane of the caliber of any other of these other teams, besides when they played Dragoons Goons to beat them to go 5-0. Yeah. So I do think that, Sushi Mixture, definitely a Ray Daption in my mind, are two bottom lanes that can get a lead big enough to contend with how much resources are likely devoted to Ariandel's success, and that will cost them more than it has against any other team.
Yeah, I think for every team here, this is the biggest step up in difficulty so far, and it should be. This is a semis grand finals matchup. There you go. That's what we have. That's what we've laid down for you here. We're going to throw up the schedule. This one's pretty simple. There's only a couple matches left, but it's going to be that Pulse versus Lotus, as well as Ducky Getters versus Dragoons Goons on Saturday. That is going to be 7:13. And the grand finals, whoever wins that, moving over there. This is going to be at 5 p.m. PST or 8 p.m. EST, so don't miss it. That was Slayer. That was Sater. And I'm Crims, and we are going to be signing out for our talk on Titans. As we hope our predictions turn true, don't miss out on our broadcast.